Jayesh, please mention your roll number. Jayesh, please mention your roll number. Rutuja, please follow the guidelines. Please follow the guidelines given to you. No, it's not updated. It's only Rutuja for me here. Okay. Okay. Am I audible to all of you? Am I audible to all of you? Yes, anyone? Okay. Okay. So we are dealing with iron, and since it is important trace elements before proceeding further, we will just have quick review what we studied in last lecture. Okay. So 3 to 4 gram of iron is present in adult human body. Out of this, 60 to 70% we can find in hemoglobin. Okay. Iron storage sites, it includes mainly liver and spleen. About 1 to 1.5 gram of iron storage we can find. And as far as iron content of 1 gram of hemoglobin is concerned, it is 3.34 milligram. In addition to hemoglobin, it is also constituent of myoglobin and enzymes like cytochrome, catalase, etc. Regarding functions, most important function is formation of hemoglobin. Another most important function is formation of antibodies. And since it is part of enzymes which plays important role in oxygen transfer, iron plays important role in oxygen transport or cell respiration. In addition, we said it is required for development of brain, it is required for proper functioning of brain. As far as catecholamines are concerned, iron is required for metabolism of these catecholamines. Even it helps in regulation of body temperature and it helps in different muscle activities. Regarding sources, two keywords you must not forget is heme iron and non-heme iron. Heme iron we get it from animal sources like liver, meat, fish, poultry, egg yolk. But here point to remember, milk is deficient source for iron. Okay. As far as non-heme iron is concerned, we get it from plant foods. Plant foods like cereals, green leafy vegetables, legumes, pulses, okay, nuts and oil seeds that you should not forget, okay, jaggery, dry fruits. There are so many sources. But here, one important thing that you are supposed to know is bioavailability. What is bioavailability? Is whatever iron we take in our diet and whatever iron which is absorbed and available for our body to utilize. Okay, so as far as absorption is concerned, you know that whatever iron we take from animal sources or heme iron, it is better absorbed than non-heme iron. Okay, this is why, because as far as plant sources is concerned, cereals may contain phytates, or leafy vegetables may contain oxalates, or tea or ragi where tannins are present, and all these things interferes with absorption of iron. Okay. At the same time, the factors which can enhance iron absorption is gastric acid and vitamin C. Okay, you know the role of vitamin C in iron absorption. It is required for conversion of ferric form to ferrous form, and ferrous form is the form in which iron is absorbed by our body. Okay, regarding storage, don't forget the keyword. The iron which is stored in our body, it is in the form of ferritin. Okay, so ferritin, it is the storage form of iron in our body. Okay, as far as iron losses are concerned, there can be basal losses or there can be loss due to hemorrhage. Okay, loss due to hemorrhage, again it can be physiological, which is related or which is mainly seen in females during reproductive age group, and this is related with the blood loss during menstruation or blood loss during childbirth. Okay, then there can be some pathological causes that are related with the hemorrhages. Okay, in addition, don't forget, after insertion of copper T intrauterine contraceptive device, for initial period there can be excess blood loss. Okay, even iron deficiency we discussed yesterday. Okay, don't forget three important stages: first, second and third stage. So in first stage, what we said, in first stage, iron stores they starts reducing but no clinical manifestation. The most important stage as far as India is concerned, this is second stage. Okay, in this stage, this is intermediate stage and we call this stage as latent iron deficiency. Okay, this is the stage which is widely prevalent in India. This is the stage which is widely prevalent in India. Okay, what happens in this stage? Iron stores are exhausted, but still clinically there are no manifestations of anemia. Okay, as far as third stage is concerned, now here you can see the parameter of hemoglobin. Hemoglobin level is reduced in third stage. Okay, so this is the stage when we see reduced hemoglobin level. By that time, all the iron stores which are present, they are exhausted. Okay, and this is the stage where clinical manifestations you can see. Okay, so there can be weakness, headache, lethargy, loss of appetite. In severe cases, patient may have breathlessness, and on examination you can find pallor and you can find koilonychia. Okay, so what we said, ultimate end result of iron deficiency is nutritional anemia. And what are the other effects? So most important thing, whenever there is iron deficiency leading to anemia, Whenever there is iron deficiency leading to anemia, the immune response of the person is reduced, or we can say there is impairment in the immunity, which is further concerned with the reduced resistance to the infection. And whenever resistance to the infection is reduced, what picture you can see in community is increased morbidity and increased mortality. Okay, for diagnosis of anemia, as far as hemoglobin level and the guideline given is concerned, so remember early anemia and marked anemia. Early anemia, hemoglobin level is between 10 to 11 grams per deciliter, whereas marked anemia we call when hemoglobin level is less than 10 grams per deciliter. Okay, now how we are going to evaluate iron status of the patient. Okay, so as far as iron status is concerned, here we are using 4 different parameters. Okay, so first is hemoglobin concentration, second is serum iron concentration, third parameter is serum ferritin, and fourth parameter is serum transferrin saturation. Okay, now as far as hemoglobin concentration is concerned, if you correlate this with the stages, so what we said, the hemoglobin concentration, it starts reducing in third stage. Okay, so as far as all these parameters is concerned, or specifically if you compare the two parameters, first two parameters, that is hemoglobin concentration and serum iron concentration, more sensitive index for us is serum iron concentration plus serum ferritin concentration. But as we said, the common practice is to see hemoglobin concentration. So as far as hemoglobin concentration is concerned, okay, when we call anemia, when the value of hemoglobin, it is less than 11 grams per deciliter. Okay, less than 11 we are calling as anemia. And again, if it is between 10 to 11, we are calling it as early anemia, and if it is below 10, we are calling it as marked anemia. As far as second parameter is concerned, where we can measure serum iron concentration. Okay, so as far as serum iron concentration is concerned, this is most useful index as compared to hemoglobin concentration. Okay, so here you are supposed to know when we are going to call the person is anemic. Okay, so normal range for serum iron, it is 0.80 to 1.80 milligrams per liter. Okay, and whenever it falls to less than 0.50 milligrams per liter, it indicates deficiency of iron. Okay, so serum iron, just one number, that is whenever serum iron concentration you find it is less than 0.50 milligrams per liter, we are interpreting this result as deficiency of iron. Okay, what is the third parameter? In third parameter, we are supposed to see serum ferritin. Okay, so serum ferritin, ferritin is what? Its storage form. So we are focusing on the iron stores. So what this parameter will reflect us? Iron stores of that person, and this is most sensitive index. Okay, as far as serum ferritin is concerned, this is most sensitive index and it is most important for us. Why this is so? This is because what we said, in India, majority of Indians, they are in second stage, okay, where iron stores are exhausted. And now our focus is to see the iron stores. So for which the parameter that we use is serum ferritin. So this is indicator of iron status of the population. Okay, so this parameter which we are using for evaluation of iron status, we are talking about serum ferritin. Okay, so serum ferritin, it is indicator of iron status of the population. Okay, so if we want to find the Indians, how many Indians are there in second stage in latent iron deficiency, we should have to use the parameter of serum ferritin. Okay, now when we can say that iron stores are absent, what is the value that you are supposed to consider? So the value is, whenever you on report find the value of serum ferritin less than 10 micrograms, okay, less than 10 micrograms per liter, okay, we are going to interpret that there is absence of stored iron, okay, or iron stores are not present. Okay, the value is less than 10 microgram. Okay, so for hemoglobin we talked in grams, for serum iron we talked in milligrams, and for serum ferritin now we are talking in micrograms. Okay, and the last parameter, as far as last parameter is concerned, here we are supposed to see serum transferrin saturation. Okay, serum transferrin saturation, and the normal value of this is 30%. Okay, unit is different here. 30% serum transferrin saturation is normal, and ideally it should be above 16%, or you can say if the value is below 16%, the person is having iron deficiency. Okay, so four important parameters we discussed as far as evaluation of iron status is concerned. Okay, once again I just repeat the parameters: hemoglobin level less than 11 grams per deciliter, serum iron concentration below 0.50 milligrams per liter, serum ferritin less than 10 micrograms per liter, and serum transferrin saturation below 16%. Okay, now as far as requirement of iron is concerned, iron requirement for different age groups. Now if you see the titles very carefully, we are talking about in third column, pay attention to the third column, we are talking about the amount of iron that should be absorbed. Okay, what amount of iron should get absorbed. Okay, so all the values are given in relation to the iron absorption. Okay, so the values are in front of you. For adult man having weight of 60 kg, it's 0.84. Okay, for adult women, now here the comparison is very important, as we said, in women during a reproductive age group. Okay, the iron requirement, since iron loss occurs, definitely iron requirement is more. Okay, so you can see here 1.65. And for pregnant women, again during pregnancy there is increased iron demand. Okay, so during pregnancy the iron absorption, it should be 2.80. Okay, but it is reduced during lactation, which is 1.65. And as far as infants are concerned, it is just in micrograms. Okay, 46 micrograms per kg per day for up to 6 months, and after that it is 87. So just to understand here is, as far as iron absorption in women is concerned, if the woman is non-pregnant, non-lactating, it is 1.65. Okay, during pregnancy it is essential that increased demand of iron is there, it should be fulfilled. Okay, so demand definitely increases, it is 2.80, and even during lactation, but it is same as far as non-pregnant, non-lactating women is concerned. Okay, so just don't forget the pregnancy state and iron requirement, which is very essential to be fulfilled. Okay, this is another chart which is given by K Park. We don't go in much more details of these values. Rather, I would like to discuss some practical aspects that are related with the anemia. 2-3 important points that are related with the nutritional anemia. Now, as far as sources of iron is concerned, okay, already you know all the sources, and right now you know that milk, it is poor source of iron, or milk is deficient in iron. Now what happens as far as infants are concerned, okay, so for feeding of infants, the most important guideline given by government is exclusive breastfeeding up to 6 months of age. Okay, exclusive breastfeeding should be given up to 6 months, but after that it is very essential that supplementary food should be given to the babies, right? Now what happens if these supplementary food, or which is also called as weaning, okay, if this weaning is not started or if it is delayed, okay, and the babies during the period of infancy, if they are given only milk, so in that case there is possibility of deficiency of iron. Okay, so it is very important, very essential to start weaning at appropriate age. Okay, so one of the factor which can contribute to iron deficiency is delayed weaning. Okay, now, in females, already we have said that the females during reproductive age group, because of menstrual loss, because of the blood loss that occurs during childbirth, okay, there is maximum possibility of occurrence of anemia. But one more thing is there, if pregnancies occurs repeatedly, okay, so repeated pregnancies can further contribute to the problem of anemia. So don't forget repeated pregnancies in relation with the anemia. Okay, if you want to correlate the problem of anemia with occupation, okay, so as far as occupational aspect and nutritional anemia, or to be specifically iron deficiency anemia is concerned, so it is related with the farmers, okay, or the people who are working in the gardens, gardeners. Okay, why this is so? Because this will be problem specifically in those areas where open defecation is practiced. Okay, so in that case there is possibility that these people may have direct contact with the soil. Okay, these people may have direct contact with the soil and there is possibility of hookworm infection. Okay, so this is another aspect which is related with the occupation. Okay, can we prevent iron deficiency anemia? So as far as prevention of iron deficiency anemia is concerned, this is mainly related with the fortification. Now, at this stage, fortification is not a new word for you. Am I right? Because already we have studied in vitamin A and vitamin D sources as fortified foods. Okay, so what we do in fortification, nutrients are added. So, same way, we can prevent nutritional anemia or iron deficiency anemia by fortification. And the food article that is used for fortification, it is salt. Okay, so fortification of salt with iron. Okay, what I said, fortification of salt with iron. So don't forget, this is one of the important preventive measure that you can think as far as iron deficiency is concerned. We will proceed further and start another important trace element. Like iron is important, iodine is also equally important. Okay, so as far as iodine is concerned, this is essential micronutrient in adult human body. About 50 milligram of iodine we can find. The blood level of iodine, it varies between 8 to 12 micrograms per deciliter. Okay, most important thing about iodine, it is essential component of thyroid hormones. This is essential component of thyroid hormones, and two important thyroid hormones enlisted here, T3, T4. Okay, T4 is thyroxine, or you may call it as tetraiodothyronine, and T3 is triiodothyronine. So as the numbers are given there, you can come to know from this that thyroxine contains 4 atoms of iodine, and triiodothyronine or T3, it contains 3 atoms of iodine. So the most important thing from this slide is iodine, which is most important or which is essential component of thyroid hormones. Yeah. Regarding functions of thyroid hormone, one thing right now it is very clear कि we said it is essential component of thyroid hormones. Okay, so iodine, it is mainly required for synthesis of T3 and T4. Okay, as far as synthesis of these hormones is concerned, it is very very important. Okay, because this synthesis of these hormones, the first step which is involved is iodine trapping. Okay, so the follicular cells which are present in the thyroid gland, first they take iodine. Okay, so the entire steps that you might have studied in physiology, they are concerned with the first step, that iodine trapping. And for iodine trapping, enough amount of iodine should be present in the body. Okay, so later on there is iodination and coupling and all these stages are there. I won't go in details of these stages, but iodine, it is most important trace element which plays important role in synthesis of T3 and T4, and it is also required for normal functioning of thyroid gland. Okay, so we said two aspects, one is hormone synthesis and second normal functioning. So for normal functioning of thyroid gland, iodine is very essential, and for synthesis of thyroid hormones, it is essential. In addition in addition, it is required for growth and development. So here you should not forget this. Okay, so initially what we said ki for other vitamins or this is additional point that you can add to the functions, but here definitely this is the most important trace elements which is required for growth as well as development. Okay, so growth and development, all functions are very important and very essential. Okay, so once again I enlisted normal functioning of thyroid gland, synthesis of T3 T4. Okay, and it is required for growth as well as development. Okay, now as far as sources of iodine is concerned, whatever different seafoods are there, just in one word we can say these are the seafoods which are rich in iodine. So it can be sea fish, these, or you may call these as marine fish, shellfish. Okay, different things what you consume from the marine water as a part of our food. Okay, and in addition to this, cod liver oil, okay, it is another source as far as iodine is concerned. Just permit me to end this meeting, I will start it again. Okay. Am I audible to all of you? Am I audible? Okay. So we are oh, okay. So we are discussing sources. Okay. So one of the rich source that you should know is seafoods. Okay, seafoods. In addition to that, smaller amount of iodine you can get from different other foods. These foods they include meat, milk, cereals, vegetables, okay? And in addition, it's water. It's water. Even some amount of iodine we can get from water. As far as drinking water is concerned, it provides about 10%. It provides about 10% of iodine, and remaining it is provided by food. Okay, so even whatever water we consume, iodine we can get from water also. Okay, one more thing, as far as iodine is concerned, the foods or vegetables which are grown in those areas or in those soil where iodine is rich. Okay, so we are talking about iodine rich soil. Okay, iodine rich soil. If vegetables they are grown in iodine rich soil, even they can provide enough amount of iodine. Okay, so here you should know that mountainous regions, okay, like Himalayan belt, which is deficient in iodine, and for the first time iodine deficiency was detected in this belt. Okay, there are some epidemiological aspect related with this, but that we will discuss in epidemiology chapter. Okay, so right now, just regarding sources, the iodine can be one of the source if the vegetables are grown in iodine rich soil. Okay, and the most important source in our diet, okay, that you should not forget regarding salt, we already talked in relation with the sodium. If you can recall, regarding salt, we talked in relation with the sodium, but that time we said only table salt or common salt. Okay, so here, as far as iodine source is concerned, it is iodized salt. It is iodized salt. Okay, so that word is important. And iodized salt is nothing but the common salt where iodine is added. Okay, so iodized salt is another source from where we can get iodine. Yeah, one more terminology for 2 mark you are supposed to know, goitrogens. Okay, we are talking now about goitrogens. What are goitrogens? As far as goitrogens are concerned, these are chemical substances. These are chemical substances which can lead to development of goiter. Okay, we are talking about those chemical substances which can lead to goiter. Okay, now why this happens? Because the goitrogens they interferes with utilization of iodine by thyroid gland. Okay, they interferes with utilization. Okay, utilization of iodine by thyroid gland. Okay, and since this interference is there, these chemical substances they may lead to goiter. Now as far as examples of these chemical substances is concerned, it includes cyanoglycosides. It includes one is cyanoglycosides. Okay, and another example which is given in K-Park, it is thiocyanates. This is thiocyanates. Okay, so these are mainly cyanoglycosides and these are mainly thiocyanate which are present in particular type of food. Okay, so basically what image you can see, these are brassica group of food. This is called as brassica group of foods. Okay, so there are certain food articles which are included in brassica group. They may contain the chemical substances, okay, like cyanoglycosides or thiocyanate, which interfere with iodine utilization by thyroid gland and may lead to goiter. Okay, so the image is very clear in front of you. You can identify it's cabbage, it's cauliflower, it's broccoli. Okay, so whatever different things that are included in brassica group. So don't forget goitrogens. Okay, brassica group of foods like cabbage, cauliflower, broccoli, okay, containing certain chemical substances which we named as cyanoglycosides or thiocyanates. What do? They interfere with iodine utilization and since they can contribute to occurrence of goiter. Okay, so if 2 mark question asked on this, you should be able to mention these few things related with the goitrogens. Now coming to the next important part as far as deficiency is concerned. Okay, iodine deficiency. We will follow the table which is given in the KPARC. Okay, so as far as 25th edition is concerned, I think this is table number 15 and generally what happens when you read the book, the tables they are neglected. Okay, but don't neglect this table. Okay, don't neglect this table because iodine deficiency disorder, this is the commonly repeated question either for 2 marks or for 5 marks. Okay, so you are supposed to know iodine as far as your exams are concerned. Okay, so now let's talk about these deficiencies in detail. Okay, so as far as the disorders or the spectrum of these iodine deficiency disorders is concerned, okay, now you may find different manifestations depending on the severity. Okay, the most important thing, the most important keyword is goiter. Okay, now in goiter, in next column you can see grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 and multinodular goiter. Now what is grade 1 goiter? Okay, as far as grade 1 goiter is concerned, when the patient holds neck in normal position, okay, it is not visible. It is not visible, but it is palpable. So when you palpate thyroid gland of your patient, you can palpate, but it is not visible. Okay, so grade 1 palpable but not visible when the neck is in normal position. Grade 2, okay, as far as grade 2 is concerned, it is visible. Okay, so when neck is hold in natural position, we can see goiter, so that time we call it as grade 2. Okay, as far as grade 3 is concerned, grade 3 goiter, it can be visualized even from a distance. Okay, even from long distance it is visible, so that is called as grade 3. Okay, so three grades. First we said only palpable, second we said it is visible, and third we said visible from distance. Okay, now as far as enlargement of thyroid gland is concerned, you know that it can be diffuse or it can be nodular. Okay, so in severe cases, even what you can find is multinodular goiter, or even it can be also called as polynodular goiter. So where you can palpate multiple nodules. Okay, when you palpate the thyroid gland, on palpation you can come to know whether this is a diffuse enlargement or whether it is nodular enlargement. Okay, so goiter is one of the most important manifestation, and don't forget to mention the grades. Okay, grade 1, 2, 3 or multinodular. Now, as far as hypothyroidism is concerned, next manifestation you can see it is hypothyroidism. Okay, and in next column you can see varying combination of clinical signs and symptoms. So just it is clinically important topic, so we will have short discussion related with the hypothyroidism. Okay, so as far as hypothyroidism, or you may say it as myxedema. Okay, what different clinical manifestations you can see in relation to systems. Okay, so we will see first in relation to the metabolism. Okay, so if you see overall basal metabolic rate in these patients, okay, we are talking about basal metabolic rate in these patients, it is decreased. Okay, if you do some investigations related with the lipid metabolism. Okay, if you see cholesterol level, so cholesterol level in these patients is increased, there is hypercholesteremia. Okay, at the same time triglyceride level, it is elevated. If you correlate hypothyroidism with carbohydrate metabolism, okay, so don't forget the most important thing is there is hypoglycemia. Okay, but this you find in very severe cases. Okay, so hypoglycemia. And as far as protein metabolism is concerned, basically in relation to protein metabolism there is positive nitrogen balance. Okay, and there is weight gain. Okay, what you can find is weight gain, but one of the important factor which contributes to weight gain is accumulation of mucoproteins. Okay, so mucoproteins gets accumulated and the patient shows weight gain, right? So what we said, overall basal metabolic rate is reduced, there is elevated level of cholesterol and triglycerides. As far as carbohydrate metabolism is concerned, there is hypoglycemia, but this you will get in very severe cases, and since we are discussing the spectrum, okay, you should know these things. Positive nitrogen balance in relation to protein metabolism, and what we said is accumulation of mucoproteins, and there is weight gain. Okay, now if you see cardiovascular system, there is decreased heart rate. Okay, so patient will show you bradycardia, even stroke volume is reduced, and even cardiac output is reduced. Okay, तो सब कम होने वाला है, कार्डियक आउटपुट कम है, स्ट्रोक वॉल्यूम कम है, हार्ट रेट कम है. ओके, एंड in later conditions there can be cardiac failure. Okay, but this is low output cardiac failure, your patient may go into cardiac failure, or there can be pericardial effusion also. Okay, so the patients of iodine deficiency disorders may present to you with pericardial effusion. तो CVS में क्या, हार्ट रेट कम होने वाला है, स्ट्रोक वॉल्यूम कम है, कार्डियक आउटपुट कम है, और सीवियरिटी ज़्यादा बढ़ती है तो लो कार्डियक आउटपुट फेलियर कैन ऑकर. ओके, एज फार एज CNS is concerned, okay, central nervous system is concerned, and another manifestation, that is cretinism, is concerned. Okay, so what is cretinism? Cretinism is basically severe hypothyroidism when it begins at early age. Okay, you can find it from infancy, and deficiency is very severe. Okay, so in that case you can find mental retardation. Okay, so there can be mental retardation. Another manifestation which is related with the musculoskeletal system. So if you talk about musculoskeletal system, there is stiffness. Okay, there is stiffness of the muscles. So stiffness, how you can elicit? So when you try to elicit different movements in your patient, and when you see that there is some resistance which is offered, okay, so that time you can say, or rather you two important things should click to your mind. One is stiffness or spasticity, regarding that we'll talk later on. Okay, and muscle stiffness, rigidity. Okay, so that we will discuss in this next spasticity aspect in detail. Okay, so here as far as musculoskeletal system is concerned, what happens, muscles are stiff and there is fatigue. The most common manifestation of hypothyroidism, don't forget, in relation to GIT. Okay, common complaint given by patient is constipation and reduced appetite. Okay, so constipation is one of the important thing, and in advanced cases there can be ascites. Like in this CVS we said, advanced cases or severe cases there can be pericardial effusion. Similarly, in relation to GIT there can be ascites, but common thing is constipation. Okay, so as far as hemopoietic system is concerned, anemia. Okay, so hypothyroidism, patients with hypothyroidism, they will have anemia. Regarding reproductive system, there can be menorrhagia in females. Okay, or there can be infertility. Okay, it can contribute to oligospermia as far as males are concerned. Okay, don't forget to see face of your patient. Okay, so as far as face is concerned, there is puffy face. Okay, and don't forget to see tongue. Okay, large tongue, puffy face, all this is the picture. As far as skin is concerned and hypothyroidism is concerned, the skin is dry. Okay, and there is intolerance to cold. Okay, patients shows intolerance to cold. The nails, hair, they become brittle. Okay, so there are so many things that are concerned as far as hypothyroidism is concerned. Okay, so depending on severity, you may get different manifestations. Okay, beginning with common, that cold intolerance. Okay, there can be puffy face. Okay, so there can be some irregularities related with the menstruation. Okay, or related with reproductive system. So many things are there. So this is about hypothyroidism. Okay, so what we said, goiter grade 1, 2, 3, multinodular, or there can be hypothyroidism, right? Another important thing, if you see intelligent level of these patients, they have below normal level of intelligence or subnormal level of intelligence. Okay, another manifestation what you can get is delayed motor milestones. Delayed motor milestones, now this is concerned with the childhood aspect. Okay, so when the baby tries to hold the head, when the baby turns head from one side to other side, okay, then baby starts transferring objects from one hand to other hand, baby starts crawling. Okay, then starts walking, all these things, running, climbing upstairs, all these motor milestones are delayed. Okay, so that is another manifestation what you can see. Mental deficiency or mental retardation, to be specifically, you can observe this in cretinism. Okay, in addition to this, there can be hearing defects or there can be speech defects. Yeah, in relation to eyes, strabismus or squint or nystagmus. Nystagmus is what? It is involuntary movement of the eyeball. It is involuntary movement, and this movement, it can occur either horizontally, vertically, or sometimes it can be rotatory. So different involuntary movements you can notice in these patients. Okay, or some patients may have squint. Again, depending on severity, it can be unilateral or it can be bilateral. Okay, spasticity. So spasticity and neuromuscular weakness is another important thing. What you can find in these patients is muscle weakness. Okay, so muscles of the legs, muscles of arm, trunk, they are weak. Okay, and in addition there is spastic diplegia or quadriplegia. So even paralysis may develop due to deficiency of iodine. Okay, so there can be either diplegia or all four limbs may get affected, resulting in quadriplegia. So as far as spasticity is concerned and clinical examination is concerned, whenever you are examining your patient, to be specifically movement, and when you see that there is resistance offered to the movement, two important things should click to your mind. One is spasticity and second one is rigidity. Okay, so this is related with the CNS lesion, and based on that you can locate the site of lesion just clinically. Okay, so to save time, I won't go in details of spasticity and rigidity right now. Okay, but for rigidity, one of the common example that all of you might be knowing is Parkinson's disease. Okay, where you can find rigidity. Yeah. So next manifestation is endemic cretinism. And in endemic cretinism, it can be hypothyroid cretinism or neurological cretinism. As far as cretinism is concerned, again, when you observe the babies, okay, how these babies can appear. So basically, sometimes some babies, even if they are having deficiency of iodine, they may appear normal, but some babies may show clinical features like here you can see that such babies, they have feeding problem. Okay, their tongue is large, their tongue is large, and majority of babies may have umbilical hernia. Okay, simultaneously umbilical hernia can be there. Again, whatever physical growth is there, whatever development is there, it is delayed. Okay, in functions we said growth and development is one of the most important function, and in cretinism this is delayed physical growth, delayed development, you can see. Okay, and in addition there is mental retardation. Okay, so intellectual level is affected, mental retardation you can see in relation to the cretinism. Okay, so as far as other disorders or a deficiency during pregnancy is concerned, it may contribute to spontaneous abortion or it may contribute even to intrauterine death. Okay, so if 2 mark question is asked, minimum 4 points you should cover from this table. Okay, from this table. And 5 marks in addition, you are supposed to mention some other things. So just to recall, it's grade 1, 2, 3 goiter or multinodular goiter. It's hypothyroidism. Intellectual level is subnormal. Okay, milestones, motor milestones are delayed. There can be hearing and speech defects. Some ocular manifestations you can get like strabismus, nystagmus, which can be further unilateral or bilateral. Okay, in case of spasticity, it may result in spastic diplegia or quadriplegia. In relation to cretinism, don't forget mental retardation. Okay, most important thing related with this, and delayed growth, delayed physical development. Yeah, and even intrauterine death can occur. What is the daily requirement of iodine? As far as daily requirement of iodine is concerned, it is 150 microgram. This is 150 microgram, okay, per day. And during pregnancy, don't forget, as we said, this is essential, it increases to 250 microgram. Okay, so during pregnancy, as per recommendation given by World Health Organization, 250 microgram daily should be consumed by pregnant women. Okay, so 250 is recommendation given by World Health Organization. Now, how we can control iodine deficiency disorders? As far as control of iodine deficiency disorder or prevention is concerned, so the initiative which is taken by Government of India is use of iodized salt. Okay, it's use of iodized salt. Now, as far as this use is concerned, initially in 1962, the objective was to supply iodized salt only to endemic regions. Okay, that is mainly to Himalayan belt and that regions. But later on in 1986, okay, in 1986, the program launched by Government of India was Iodine Deficiency Disorders Control Program. Okay, IDDCP. IDD, you know, Iodine Deficiency Disorders. CP is Control Program. Okay, so objective of this program is to replace entire edible salt by iodized salt. Okay, so the most important part of controlling iodine deficiencies in community as far as health programs is concerned, it is use of iodized salt. Okay, now I request CR to please start with the attendance. We will continue in next lecture. Raise your hands. Please raise your hands. Yes, yes. Raise your hands, juniors, raise your hands. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thanks.